Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I got divorced 2 years ago and have been dealing with my ex-wife's entitled behavior ever since. I used to sell MJ to make ends meet. Not proud of it, but it paid the bills when my ex-wife refused to work more than part-time while constantly complaining about our money problems. We lived in Los Angeles, which meant everything cost a fortune. The pressure was crushing me, so I decided to turn my life around. I taught myself plumbing, got licensed, and started my own business. It was hard work, but I was determined to provide for my family the right way. Despite my efforts, my ex-wife kept finding reasons to complain. She'd spend money we didn't have, then blame me for not earning enough. She'd promise to pick up more hours at work, then make excuses about why she couldn't. The final straw came when she accused me of being selfish for working long hours to support us. That's when I knew our marriage was over. 2 years ago, we finally separated. I moved into a small apartment across town, but I kept paying her rent because of our 2 kids. I didn't want them to suffer because their parents couldn't make it work. I also kept paying for our family phone plan and all the utilities at her place, including the internet service through Spectrum. About 6 months after I moved out, I told her I was going to separate our phone lines soon. She said she'd handle getting her own carrier, but weeks turned into months with no action. I finally gave her an ultimatum and even helped by doing a three-way call with a new carrier so she could port her number over. She acted like I was being unreasonable for wanting to split our phone plan after our divorce. I explained that I wasn't trying to be difficult, just that we needed separate services now. She complained that she was too busy with work and the kids to deal with it right away, but she never did get to it. I ended up canceling her line myself. A year ago, I realized I was still paying for the internet at her house. When I brought it up, she went into full manipulation mode. I told her she needed to get her own internet service, and she acted shocked that I would mess with the kids' internet access over what she called a few dollars. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the money being small and it wasn't really about the kids, since she could easily get her own account. She claimed she couldn't afford it right now and promised to handle it next month. Like an idiot, I let it slide. Then next month became the month after, and so on. Every time I brought it up, she'd either guilt-trip me about the kids or promise she'd handle it soon. Yesterday, I got not one but 2 emails from Spectrum thanking me for my payment. I'm barely scraping by right now, working extra jobs just to keep my own head above water, and seeing those charges hit my account made my blood boil. I was done being Mr. Nice Guy. When I picked up the kids later that day, I had a plan. I told her I needed to grab something from inside real quick. I walked straight to the router and unplugged it. She asked what I was doing and I explained I was taking my router back since I'd told her a year ago to get her own internet. She protested that I couldn't just take it because the kids had homework. I reminded her that she should have listened when I told her to get her own service. She followed me to my car, still arguing, but I was done with the conversation. Today, I took the router to the Spectrum store to cancel the service. That's when things got interesting. The customer service representative was pulling up my account when she frowned at her screen. She told me there was a mobile line on the account and asked if it was mine. I was confused because I only had internet service with them, not mobile. She showed me the screen and there it was. My ex-wife had somehow added her phone number to my account without telling me. She'd been getting mobile service through my Spectrum account this whole time. The representative asked if I wanted to cancel the mobile service too. I told her absolutely. She warned me that canceling this way would mean my ex-wife would need to get a completely new phone number because it couldn't be transferred once the service was terminated like this. That was perfect. Not only was I finally free of paying for her internet, but she was going to lose her phone number because she'd been too sneaky and lazy to do things properly. I told the representative that was my ex-wife's problem now. The woman confirmed she'd cancel both services right away and mentioned this would save me about $100 per month. Walking out of that store felt amazing. For years, I'd bent over backward trying to be the good guy, paying for everything while she took advantage of my kindness. She'd manipulated me into thinking I was being unfair whenever I tried to set boundaries. I know she's probably furious right now, dealing with no internet and having to explain to everyone why her phone number changed. Part of me feels a little bad, but mostly I'm relieved. I spent our entire relationship being considerate while she was selfish. I worked myself to the bone trying to provide while she complained about everything I did. She brought this on herself. If she'd just gotten her own services like any other adult would have done after a divorce, none of this would have happened. Instead, she chose to be sneaky and add her phone to my account without permission, probably thinking I'd never notice or that I'd be too nice to do anything about it. For once, her assumption was wrong. I'm done being taken advantage of. The $100 I'm saving each month will actually make a real difference in my budget, and knowing that she finally has to face what happens when you try to take advantage of people feels pretty good too. I work from home with my girlfriend in a city about 2.5 hours away from my family. She had a tough childhood with trauma, but my family has been welcoming to her from day one. They always include her in family events and treat her like she's already part of the family. Every weekday at lunch, we call each other and go for walks around our neighborhoods while we talk. It's become our routine and I look forward to it each day. Yesterday started normal until just before lunch, when my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. My grandfather had been taken to the hospital. That was all she knew at the time, but those words hit me hard. My grandfather means the world to me. He raised me for a few years when my parents were going through financial difficulties, and he's always been like a second father to me. When my girlfriend called for our usual walk, I was still processing the news. My voice probably sounded shaky when I answered. I told her about the bad news that my grandfather was in the hospital. She asked what happened, and I explained that I didn't know much yet since my mom had just texted that he was taken in without many details. I told her I was really worried. She asked if that was all I knew, and I said yes, explaining that they were probably busy at the hospital dealing with everything. I expected her to ask how I was doing or if I needed anything. Instead, what came next caught me off guard. She asked why no one had texted her about this. When I asked what she meant, she explained that my family should have told her too, since she was my girlfriend and cared about my grandfather. I stood there on the sidewalk, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what she was saying. Here I was, worried sick about my grandfather, and her main concern was about not being included in a family emergency text. I tried to reassure her that they were at the hospital and probably just quickly texted me because I was his grandson and that it wasn't personal. But she said she should have been told too because this made her feel like they didn't consider her family. I told her that wasn't it at all and that she knew how much my family loved her, explaining that they were just dealing with an emergency right now. She said she just felt so left out and that this always happened to her. I knew she struggled with abandonment issues from her childhood, and I'd always been supportive when those feelings came up. But this felt different. This was supposed to be about my grandfather, about me needing support, but somehow it had become about her feelings again. The rest of our walk was tense. I tried to reassure her while also dealing with my own anxiety about my grandfather's condition. By the time we hung up, I felt emotionally drained. This morning, I finally got an update. My grandfather had fallen and suffered a mini stroke, but he was going to be okay. They were monitoring him and expected to release him in a few days. The relief was overwhelming. After work, my girlfriend came over to my place. I cooked dinner for both of us, hoping we could just have a quiet evening together. But she was still upset about the text situation. She told me she'd been thinking about it all day and asked if I could text my mom to ask her to keep us posted on my grandfather. I was exhausted from worrying and cooking, and I just wanted to eat and relax. Without really thinking about it, I quickly typed out a message to my mom, asking her to keep me posted on my grandfather's condition. I hit send and put my phone down. My girlfriend looked at my phone and asked if I had just said me instead of us. I apologized and said I was just tired and not thinking clearly, but she asked if I was kidding her right now, saying that now it looked like she didn't even care about my grandfather. I tried to explain that my family knew she cared since she'd always been close with them. She said that wasn't the point and that the optics of this were terrible. She explained that first they didn't tell her about the emergency and now I was excluding her from updates, wondering what they were going to think. I told her they were going to think she cared because she always had, and that one text didn't change that. She said I didn't understand how this made her look. She said she'd worked so hard to be accepted by my family, and now this was happening. I stared at her across the dinner table, feeling something shift inside me. Here I was, still processing the fear I'd felt about potentially losing my grandfather, and she was more concerned about how she appeared to my family than actually supporting me through this scary situation. I told her I thought there was a bigger issue here. When she asked what I meant, I explained that yesterday when I told her about my grandfather, the first thing she worried about was not being included in the text. I pointed out that today she was more concerned about how she looked to my family than how I was feeling about almost losing someone I loved. She said that wasn't fair and that, of course, she cared about my grandfather. I told her that it didn't feel that way, and that this entire situation had been about her and her feelings instead of about supporting me when I needed it. She said that she did support me, but that she also had feelings about being left out. I said that I'd always supported her through those feelings, but pointed out that yesterday I needed her to support me, and instead she made it about herself. The room went quiet. She sat there for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She asked if I was saying she was selfish. I told her I was saying that when I needed my girlfriend to be there for me during a family emergency, she was more worried about text message etiquette than my emotional state. She said fine and that if that was how I really felt, maybe she should just leave. I told her that maybe she should think about what kind of partner she wanted to be before she made that decision. She grabbed her things and walked for the door. When she was leaving, she turned back and told me not to expect her to care about my family emergencies anymore if this was how I was going to treat her. I told her that my grandfather was fine, by the way, and thanked her for asking. She slammed the door behind her. I started coaching high school football when I was 22 years old and desperately needed work. The local school district was hiring assistant coaches for $250 a week, which wasn't much but kept me afloat. 8 years later, I'm still here because these kids became my whole world. I've watched hundreds of players grow from nervous freshmen into strong young men who go on to college and careers. Our team, the Eagles, has struggled for most of the season with only 3 wins and 6 losses. This final game against our crosstown rivals, the Panthers, would determine if we squeezed into the last playoff spot. The Panthers were 8-1, heavily favored to crush us by at least 21 points. But my boys have been working harder than ever, staying after practice until 6:30 p.m. every night for the past month. They ran extra conditioning drills, studied game film, and pushed each other to be better. I had never been more proud of a team's dedication. Game day arrived on a cold Friday night in November. The stands were completely packed with over 1,500 people. Students painted their faces in school colors, parents brought homemade signs, and the entire community showed up. Local radio was broadcasting live, and even some college scouts were in attendance looking at a few of our seniors. The atmosphere was electric with nervous energy. Kickoff was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp. Both teams came out firing on all cylinders. My quarterback threw for 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and our defense was playing lights out. We actually took a 14-7 lead into halftime, shocking everyone, including myself. During the third quarter, that's when I first noticed her. This woman in the Panthers section was standing up constantly, screaming at referees and pointing at our players. She wore an expensive Panthers jersey that probably cost $60 and had that entitled look that experienced coaches learned to spot immediately. Her son was number 24, their starting running back, who was having a decent but not spectacular game. On a routine third down play, one of my defensive backs made a perfectly legal tackle on her son. The kid got up fine, jogged back to the huddle, and the game continued normally. But this woman completely lost her mind. She started screaming that our player had deliberately tried to hurt her precious baby. She was pointing directly at my defender, a 17-year-old honor student who weighs maybe 155 pounds and has never been in trouble. This kid volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends and helps his grandmother with grocery shopping. He's one of the most respectful players I've ever coached. Other parents in her section started looking uncomfortable and asking her to calm down. Her husband kept trying to pull her back into her seat, but she kept shrugging him off. The referees made a holding call against the Panthers on the next play, which sent her into an even bigger rage. She started yelling that the officials were being paid off and that our school was cheating. Security walked over to talk to her, but she waved them away and kept screaming. The fourth quarter started with us leading 21-14. The Panthers were driving desperately down the field with only 4 minutes left on the clock. Their coach was calling timeout after timeout, trying to stop the clock and preserve time. On a crucial second down play, her son carried the ball and got tackled by 3 of my players. It was a textbook gang tackle, completely legal and properly executed. The kid got up slowly, favoring his left ankle slightly but clearly not seriously injured. He walked off the field under his own power and was back in the game 2 plays later. But Karen had seen enough. She suddenly jumped over the fence, separating the stands from the field. Parents aren't allowed on the playing field during games under any circumstances according to State Athletic Association rules. Security immediately started running toward her, but she was moving surprisingly fast for someone wearing high heels. She was screaming that our dirty players had intentionally hurt her baby and that she was going to make us pay. She charged straight at my defensive back, the same kid she'd been targeting all night. He was standing on the sideline completely confused about what was happening. This grown woman was running at him like she was going to tackle him herself. My player saw her coming and tried to back away, but she lunged forward and grabbed his face mask. She started shaking his helmet violently while screaming about how he was a dirty cheater. She was also threatening to sue him, sue me, sue the school, and sue everyone she could think of. That's when my entire offensive line stepped in to protect their teammate. These 5 boys, each weighing between 200 and 250 pounds, saw an adult attacking their friend. Their football instincts kicked in immediately. They didn't throw punches or do anything violent. They just did what they've been trained to do for years. They tackled her. It was honestly the most perfect group tackle I'd witnessed in 8 years of coaching. They converged on her like she was carrying the football in the championship game. They took her down cleanly and held her on the ground until security and police arrived. Karen was screaming the entire time, but now her tone had changed completely. She was crying and moaning about her shoulder, claiming the boys had broken her arm. When she hit the turf, something had definitely popped in her shoulder joint. The paramedics had to be called onto the field to evaluate her condition. They determined she had a dislocated shoulder and possible ligament damage. While they were strapping her to a stretcher, 2 police officers showed up. Apparently, several parents had called 911 when they saw her attack my player. The lead officer told her that she was under arrest for assault on a minor and criminal trespassing on school property. Karen started screaming that this was completely unfair and that the boys had attacked her first. She claimed she was the real victim and threatened to sue everyone for $10 million. The officer explained that they had over 200 witnesses and multiple cell phone videos of her attacking a 17-year-old student. He read her rights while the paramedics loaded her into the ambulance. Her husband stayed behind to apologize profusely to everyone involved, especially my player. He seemed like a genuinely decent man who was just married to someone with serious anger management issues. He even offered to pay for any medical expenses if my player needed to be checked out. We ended up winning the game 28-14. My boys played their hearts out for the remaining 3 minutes after the incident. Seeing them protect their teammate like that made me prouder than any championship trophy ever could. That's what football teaches you about brotherhood and loyalty. The story made the front page of the local newspaper the next morning. Karen ended up with a dislocated shoulder that required surgery costing over $8,000. She also faced criminal charges for assault on a minor, which carried potential jail time. The court eventually sentenced her to 120 hours of community service and anger management classes. She was also banned from attending any school sporting events in our district for 5 years. My player was completely fine physically, but needed a few counseling sessions to deal with the emotional trauma of being attacked by an adult. The school district paid for his therapy sessions, which lasted about 6 weeks. We went on to win our first playoff game the following week, then advanced all the way to the state championship. Those boys played like warriors for the rest of the season, and I was honored to be their coach. The incident actually brought our team closer together and motivated them to prove they were winners both on and off the field. My brother was a veteran who served 2 tours overseas. When he came back, he wasn't the same person who left. He had PTSD, mobility issues from an injury, and started having seizures. The doctors recommended he get a service dog, and that's how Max came into our lives. Max isn't just any dog. He's a 6-year-old German Shepherd who went through years of specialized training. He cost over $20,000 and can detect seizures before they happen, provide mobility support when my brother's legs gave out, and help ground him during panic attacks. Max literally saved my brother's life more times than I can count. When my brother passed away 6 months ago, he made sure Max would be taken care of. In his will, he named me as Max's legal successor. It wasn't something I took lightly. Max had been my brother's constant companion, his lifeline, and now he was grieving just as much as the rest of us. Some nights I'd find him lying by my brother's bedroom door, just waiting. Taking care of Max meant learning his routines, his signals, his needs. He's incredibly well behaved and still performs his tasks out of habit, even though I don't need them the same way my brother did. But Max is family now. He's all I have left of my brother in many ways. Then last week, out of nowhere, I got a message from my cousin. We hadn't spoken in over a year after some family drama at Christmas. Her message was short and demanding. She told me she heard I had a service dog and that I didn't need him. She said her son had anxiety and could use a therapy dog instead. I stared at my phone for a good 5 minutes. No hello, no condolences about my brother, no acknowledgement that we hadn't talked in forever. Just straight to demanding my brother's service dog. I wrote back explaining that Max wasn't just a therapy dog. He was a trained service animal with years of specialized training. My brother had left him to me in his will, and legally I was his handler now. Her response made my blood boil. She asked if I was choosing a dog over a child's mental health. She was trying to guilt-trip me over a dog that wasn't even mine to give away, even if I wanted to. I told her that Max wasn't something I could just hand over. He wasn't a pet. He was a working service animal with specific training and legal documentation. Then she offered me $300 for him. $300 for a dog that cost over $20,000 to train, for my brother's companion who had been through hell and back, for a family member who was still grieving. I actually laughed out loud. I told her no, plain and simple. She called me ridiculous and selfish. I said the conversation was over and stopped responding. The next afternoon, I was in my kitchen making lunch when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked out the window and saw my cousin getting out with a boy who looked about 10 years old. My stomach dropped. They walked up to my front door and started pounding on it. She yelled that she knew I was inside and demanded I open up. I stayed quiet, hoping they'd just leave. Max came over and sat next to me, sensing something was wrong. His training kicked in, even though I wasn't his original handler. The pounding continued for another few minutes. Then I heard her talking to her son outside. She told him that I was the lady who had the dog that could help him, but that I was being mean and wouldn't share. She was involving her kid in this manipulation. I felt bad for the boy, but I wasn't about to open that door. After about 10 more minutes, she started yelling through the door. She called me cruel and said I was wasting Max's potential. She claimed that dog could be helping her son instead of sitting around doing nothing. That's when I lost it. I walked to the door but didn't open it. I yelled back that the only waste here was her audacity. I told her that Max wasn't a toy she could just take. He was grieving, he was traumatized, and he was exactly where he belonged. She shouted that I didn't even need him because I wasn't disabled. I yelled back that she didn't know what I needed, and even if I didn't need him, he wasn't hers to take. Then she threatened to call the police. She said I couldn't keep a service dog if I didn't need it. I told her to go ahead because I had all the legal paperwork saying he was mine. I heard her stomp back to her car, still yelling about how unfair it all was. Her poor son looked confused and embarrassed. They drove off, but not before she rolled down her window to shout that I would regret this. I called my lawyer that afternoon to make sure all of Max's paperwork was in order. Turns out, even if I wasn't disabled, the dog was legally mine through inheritance. My cousin had no leg to stand on. She did call the police, but when they showed up 2 days later, they took one look at the will and the service dog documentation and told me I was fine. The officer even mentioned that people trying to steal service dogs was becoming a bigger problem. He explained that I was well within my rights, and that even if the dog wasn't legally mine, you can't just transfer a service dog to someone else without proper evaluation and training. My cousin tried calling a few more times, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. She ranted about how I was destroying her son's mental health and being a terrible person. I blocked her number after the fifth message. A week later, my aunt called me. My cousin had been telling everyone in the family that I stole her son's therapy dog. But my aunt had done some digging and discovered something interesting. My cousin had never even gotten her son evaluated for anxiety. She had just decided he needed a service dog after seeing some post online about how expensive they are. Turns out my cousin had seen a social media post about service dogs and their value, then remembered I had Max. She thought she could get a $20,000 dog for $300 and probably sell him for profit. Max is doing better now. He's still grieving, but he's found his place in our home. He follows his routines, keeps me company, and sometimes I swear he's protecting my brother's memory just as much as he's protecting me. My cousin hasn't contacted me since I blocked her, but I heard she's been complaining to anyone who'll listen about how unfair the whole situation is. My childhood was built around my parents' obsession with perfect health. Every meal was measured to the gram, sugar was banned from our house, and my mother would remind me daily that nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. They wouldn't let me use salad dressing because it had too many calories. Even bananas were rationed because they contained natural sugars. My father would make me step on the scale every morning before school and write the number on a chart hanging in the kitchen. When I turned 13 and started developing curves, my parents put me on a strict 1,500 calorie diet. I had to log everything I ate in a notebook they checked every night. By 16, I was surviving on coffee for breakfast, a plain lettuce salad for lunch, and picking at whatever small portion they served me for dinner. Everyone praised how disciplined I was. Teachers complimented my willpower. Relatives told my parents how lucky they were to have such a health-conscious daughter, and friends asked for my diet secrets. The positive attention made me feel like I was doing something right, so I kept cutting more calories. Some days I'd eat less than 800 calories total. I told myself I was just being healthy, like my parents taught me. It took me 10 years to understand that I had developed a severe eating disorder. Those 10 years included 2 hospitalizations, countless therapy sessions, working with nutritionists, and slowly relearning that food wasn't my enemy. Recovery meant gaining weight as my body healed from years of restriction. When I finally started eating normal portions again, I put on about 60 pounds over 2 years. My aunt would corner me at family gatherings and ask what happened to my self-control. My mother would suggest I try her latest cleanse or remind me how good I used to look. Co-workers who remembered me from before would comment that I'd really let myself go. The neighbor across the street told me she barely recognized me and that I should think about joining her gym. Even strangers felt entitled to give me unsolicited advice about portion sizes and exercise. The irony was crushing because for the first time in my adult life, I was actually taking care of myself properly. I worked at a medium-sized accounting firm in the downtown business district. Most of my colleagues minded their own business, but one woman seemed to monitor everyone's eating habits and appearance changes. Karen was in her early 40s, spent her lunch breaks at the gym, and posted daily photos of her protein smoothies and workout gear. She'd walk past people's desks during lunch and make comments about their food choices. When someone brought birthday cake to the office, she loudly announced that she couldn't eat sugar because she valued her health too much. She once told our receptionist that her sandwich looked like it had too many carbs. For 3 years, Karen made it her mission to comment on my weight and eating habits. She'd look at my lunch and shake her head like she was disappointed in me. When I'd heat up leftovers in the microwave, she'd stand nearby and tell me that my portions were too large for someone my size. She suggested I try meal replacement shakes instead of real food. Once she brought me a pamphlet about a weight loss program and left it on my desk, with a note saying she thought it might help me get back on track. I started bringing my lunch in an opaque bag and eating at my desk to avoid her commentary. But she'd still find ways to bring up my weight during meetings or casual conversations. She'd ask if I'd considered seeing a nutritionist or mention how much better I'd feel if I lost some weight. Then last spring, everything changed in a way I never expected. I started losing weight rapidly without trying to. At first, I lost about 5 pounds in 2 weeks, which seemed normal enough, but then I lost another 10 pounds the following month, even though I wasn't dieting or exercising more. I felt exhausted all the time and had severe stomach pains that kept me awake at night. Food started making me nauseous, and I could barely keep anything down some days. When I lost 25 pounds in 6 weeks, I knew something was seriously wrong. The doctor visits started with blood tests, then moved to scans and biopsies. I spent 3 weeks going to different specialists, each one ordering more tests. The waiting was horrible because I knew my body was falling apart, but I didn't know why. When they finally diagnosed me with an autoimmune condition that attacks my digestive system, I felt relief mixed with terror. Relief because there was finally an explanation for what was happening to me. Terror because the doctor told me there was no cure, only treatments to manage the symptoms. The medication helped reduce some of the inflammation, but eating became a daily challenge. Some mornings I could manage toast and tea, other days even water made me sick. I had to start carrying anti-nausea pills everywhere and learned which foods were most likely to stay down. My weight kept dropping about 2 to 3 pounds every week, while I felt weaker and sicker than I'd ever felt in my life. Everyone around me started treating me like I'd accomplished something amazing. Karen became absolutely insufferable with her compliments. She'd stop by my desk multiple times a day to tell me how incredible I looked. She asked what diet plan I was following and begged me to share my secrets. When I explained that I wasn't trying to lose weight and was actually sick, she'd wink and say that we all claim we're not dieting. She told me that whatever I was doing was clearly working and that I should keep it up. She even asked if I was taking any special supplements that she could try. One Tuesday morning, I was having an especially bad day with my condition. I'd been up since 3 a.m. with stomach cramps and had barely managed to get dressed and drive to work. I was sitting at my desk trying to sip some ginger tea when Karen appeared with her usual bright smile. She gushed about how fantastic I looked and asked if I'd lost even more weight since yesterday. I looked up at her feeling completely drained and told her I wasn't sure. She went on about how my hard work was really paying off and how I must feel so much more confident now. She said she hoped I would keep up whatever routine I was following because it was obviously perfect for me. That was the moment I decided I was done being polite about her inappropriate comments. I set down my teacup and looked directly at her. I thanked her and told her that I'd been diagnosed with an incurable autoimmune disease and had almost died. I said I fully recommended it if she was also interested in losing weight quickly. The smile vanished from her face immediately. Her mouth opened and closed several times like she was trying to speak but couldn't form words. Her face went from pale to red and back to pale again. She stammered that she had no idea and that she was just trying to give me a compliment. I asked her what exactly she was complimenting, my disease symptoms or the fact that my digestive system was attacking itself. She stood there looking mortified for several more seconds before mumbling an apology and practically running back to her cubicle. For the rest of that day, she avoided making eye contact with me and took a completely different path to avoid walking past my desk. Word about my condition spread through the office within days. By the following week, everyone knew about my diagnosis And suddenly, Karen's constant commentary about people's appearances didn't seem as harmless to our coworkers. People started calling her out when she made remarks about others, telling her that her comments were inappropriate and hurtful. She became much quieter about sharing her opinions on everyone's bodies and eating habits. The office manager even had a conversation with her about keeping personal comments to herself during work hours. I hadn't lied about anything. I really had almost died before getting my diagnosis, and my rapid weight loss really was caused by an incurable disease that was destroying my digestive system. Karen still works in our office, but she hasn't made a single comment about my appearance since that day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.